The quiet hum of a perfect life can be the most dangerous lullaby. Sometimes, the deepest secrets aren't hidden in shadows, but in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of everything you hold dear. What happens when the truth you've built your world upon shatters, revealing meticulously constructed deception at its core? Arthur's mornings commenced with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The rich aroma of coffee permeated the kitchen, a scent so familiar it felt like an extension of his own senses. His children, Miles, Luna, and Evan, tumbled in one after another, a cascade of youthful energy. Miles, ever the enthusiast, would instantly demand his favorite waffles, while Luna, her mind already buzzing with prehistoric wonders, would remind him about a new dinosaur fact she'd learned. Evan, still caught in the liminal space between sleep and wakefulness, would mumble vaguely about a forgotten Spanish assignment. Through this delightful chaos, their mother, Alara, would glide in, a tray laden with sizzling bacon in her hands, navigating the morning ritual with an almost ethereal grace. It was a scene plucked from a family album. The tech-savvy father, the inviting kitchen, a life that exuded harmony and made perfect, logical sense. Yet, the deceptive comfort of such a seemingly flawless existence often conceals a fragile core. Later that same night, a subtle, disquieting sound pulled Arthur from his slumber. It wasn't the rhythmic thrum of the dishwasher, nor the familiar creak of the old house settling. This was something distinct, softer, yet laced with an unsettling uncertainty. He carefully eased himself out of bed, each movement deliberate, and began a silent descent down the stairs. The house appeared to be in repose, bathed in the moon's gentle glow, until hushed whispers drifted from the direction of Alara's home office. "You promised you'd tell him after Miles was born." A man's voice, low and burdened, resonated through the stillness. Arthur froze, his blood chilling. "I tried." Alara's voice, a fragile whisper, replied. But then he left the financial sector. Everything felt so precarious. "I couldn't risk it then." That voice, the one speaking with such gravity, belonged to Caleb. Caleb, his closest confidant, the godfather to his children, a friendship spanning 13 years. Caleb's quiet lament continued. "They believe I'm merely Uncle Caleb." A vice-like grip tightened around Arthur's chest. He leaned in closer, his breathing shallow, almost imperceptible. "I've guarded this secret for an eternity," Caleb murmured. Alara retorted, her voice tinged with desperation. "But Arthur, he is their father. Not through biological ties, perhaps, but in every profound and meaningful way that truly counts. If I disclose this now, it will utterly devastate them." Caleb, however, remained unconvinced. The truth always finds a way. DNA kits are sold even in convenience stores now. Alara's response was quick, dismissive. "He won't ever consider one. He trusts me implicitly." Arthur felt a bitter, hollow laugh bubble up within him. At his own company, he rigorously constructed systems based on a zero-trust architecture. At home, trust had seemingly equated to blindness. "True," Caleb conceded, then a fresh resolve entered his tone. "I'm done with this charade. You visit for holidays. I carry this burden every single day." A softer note entered his voice. "We shared a deep affection, Alara. Don't deny what was." Alara's admission was a mere breath. "I did love you, Caleb, but now Arthur is my husband." Caleb pressed, his voice laced with a raw edge. "Do you love him?" Alara's reply felt like a carefully rehearsed deflection. "I love the way he cherishes our children." Caleb's retort was immediate, cutting. "That is not the same thing at all." And then came the sentence, a single, devastating blow that splintered Arthur's world into a million fragments. Caleb, Arthur isn't their biological father, but he's the only dad they've ever truly known. Arthur stumbled backward, the sudden onslaught of understanding leaving his skin slick with cold sweat. He can never discover this, Alara insisted, her voice now barely audible. Caleb's question hung heavy in the air, unspoken, but implied. And if he does? Alara's answer was delivered with a chilling softness, but it resonated with a terrifying finality. Then we lose everything. The revelation struck Arthur with the force of a head-on collision. Without a single word, he retreated upstairs. Alara's pillow, usually a source of comforting lavender fragrance, offered no solace. He perched on the edge of the bed, his gaze fixed on the impenetrable darkness of the backyard, where the swing set swayed gently in the unseen wind. His phone screen blinked, displaying the stark numbers, 2:21 a.m. His sleep tracker's report of 8 hours felt like data pertaining to an entirely different person's life. A sliver of light escaped from beneath the office door. Minutes earlier, that light would have signaled Alara's quiet dedication to her writing. Now, it screamed of concealment. He buried his face in his hands, desperately attempting to process the seismic shift his reality had just undergone. A DNA test. Confront her. Say nothing. The options whirled in a disorienting vortex. A muffled thud from downstairs signaled Caleb's departure. The house settled back into silence, but it was not the peaceful silence of slumber. It was a silence haunted by unspoken truths, a mausoleum of secrets. Arthur's eyes swept across the room. Framed photographs, crayon drawings, scattered construction bricks. Ordinary fragments of a shared family life that now felt like cryptic clues in a meticulously woven lie he hadn't even known existed. The old Cascade Point photo, behind the lens, Caleb's hand pressing the shutter. Not the time, he whispered to himself, the words catching in his throat. He lay down, occupying the absolute furthest edge of the mattress. The unwavering glow from under the office door persisted. Alara's words, like a broken record, looped endlessly in his tormented mind. He is not their biological father. The wind intensified its mournful sigh, and the first heavy drops of rain began to drum against the roof. His meticulously organized calendar, meetings, workouts, a critical 9 a.m. conference call, still existed, a rigid framework of a life that suddenly seemed utterly meaningless. He heard the faint creak of the bedroom door. Alara's footsteps were soft, hesitant. "Are you asleep?" she whispered, her voice a fragile wisp. He remained motionless, maintaining his feigned slumber. She gently adjusted the blanket over him, paused for an agonizing second, then retreated. The sliver of light beneath the office door vanished. Darkness, absolute and profound, enveloped the room. Arthur clutched his pillow, as if it were a shield against the crushing weight of his new reality. Her final, damning words still echoed in the silent chamber of his mind. He'll never know. But he knew. He absolutely knew. Sleep remained an elusive stranger. By the time the first rays of dawn pierced the horizon, he was operating on sheer, brutal habit. The coffee brewed automatically. He forced a smile, a grotesque contortion, at Luna's best dad ever sign, proudly taped to the kitchen cabinet. The kitchen air was thick with the comforting aroma of French toast and a faint citrusy note. Alara was already dressed, an uncharacteristically early start to her day. Her phone lay face down on the counter, a subtle deviation from her usual habit. He handed Miles his breakfast, mimicking normalcy, but every interaction, every gesture felt meticulously staged, an elaborate charade. After the children had departed for school, Arthur made his way to Alara's office. He tried the door. Locked. A cold knot formed in his stomach. That door was only ever locked around the festive season, concealing the secrets of Christmas gifts. Searching for something? Alara's voice, unnervingly calm, drifted from the foot of the stairs. Just my phone charger, he lied, the words feeling alien on his tongue. She pointed vaguely towards the living room. Her voice, too, sounded oddly rehearsed, devoid of its usual spontaneous warmth. As he drove to his company headquarters, Arthur bypassed his usual morning podcast. His mind, a frantic hamster wheel, endlessly circled the same agonizing question. How deep does this deception run? At a traffic light, a text message from Caleb flickered across his dashboard screen. Something mundane about Evan's upcoming game, accompanied by an unsettlingly cheerful smiley face emoji. He ignored it. At the office, he conducted a critical meeting, his body functioning on autopilot, a mere vessel. Complex diagrams and technical jargon flowed effortlessly from his lips, while his brain relentlessly replayed old memories, dissecting them, seeking hidden meanings. Alara's pregnancy. Caleb, an omnipresent figure in every photograph, referring to each child as my godson. After the meeting, Arthur subtly messaged a legal acquaintance. His query was framed casually. How does one obtain a DNA test anonymously? Just for fun, a bit of a laugh. But the reply arrived swiftly, a green check mark indicating its feasibility. His casual query had yielded a chillingly serious answer. Lunch was a solitary affair, just water. A colleague, noticing his unusual restraint, asked about his second coffee. Arthur lied without a flicker of hesitation. The kids kept me up last night. Lying, he realized, had become alarmingly effortless. His life, once so transparent, had transformed into an elaborate theatrical production. On the drive home, he spotted Caleb's truck parked conspicuously close to his own residence. Arthur waited, hidden from view, then activated his dash cam's recording function. Inside, Caleb was engaged in a lively game of table hockey with Evan. Luna's laughter, light and carefree, echoed nearby. It presented the picture of a perfectly happy family, except for one unsettling detail. There was one dad too many. Alara emerged, announcing, with a feigned sigh, that the oven had inconveniently broken. Pizza night it would be. Arthur volunteered to drive. Alara settled into the passenger seat. Caleb and the children piled into the back. In the rearview mirror, Arthur observed Caleb meticulously buckling Luna into her seat, a process that seemed to take an unnecessarily long time. The mask Arthur had worn for so long was beginning to slip, but he wasn't yet ready to fully reveal his true self. In the bustling parking lot of the pizza parlor, Arthur feigned forgetfulness of his wallet. Caleb, ever the accommodating friend, remained in the car while Arthur lingered at the curb, adopting a casual demeanor. "How have you been, Caleb?" he asked, his voice betraying none of the turmoil within. Caleb shrugged, a seemingly nonchalant gesture. "Planes, projects, I'm flying to Austin tomorrow." Arthur's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "The kids will certainly miss you." Caleb chuckled, a sound almost too quick, too forced. "I'm not around that much, really." The line, Arthur noted, sounded strangely rehearsed. That evening, after the children were tucked into their beds, Arthur announced he was going to take a shower. Instead, he slipped silently into Alara's home office. The lock code, Evan's birthday, a date he'd always associated with joy, came to him without conscious thought. He opened the top drawer, finding only pens and paper. The second drawer, however, held a thick, unlabeled envelope. Inside, he discovered a sheaf of Crestview genetic diagnostics paperwork, precisely dated to Alara's first pregnancy. The father field had been meticulously blacked out, but holding it under a bright lamp, a name, almost bleeding through the paper, became discernible: Holton. He quickly snapped photos, then meticulously returned everything to its precise original position. As he exited the office, Alara's voice, surprisingly close, called from the hallway. "Just checking the printer paper," he replied, his voice carefully casual. She gazed at him for a moment too long before finally offering a slow, deliberate nod. Arthur returned to the living room and settled in front of his laptop, not to write code, but to meticulously document his burgeoning list of unsettling discoveries. Whispers at 2 a.m. A locked office door. Alara's phone, conspicuously face down. Caleb's unnerving familiarity with the children's schedules. That damning envelope. He saved the file to a secure cloud server, just in case. Sleep, once again, refused to come. He endlessly replayed the images in his mind. Perhaps he was imagining things. Perhaps the name wasn't real. Perhaps none of it meant anything. But each time doubt began to creep in, one image, sharp and undeniable, cut through the uncertainty. Caleb gently patting Evan's shoulder in the car, a gesture so natural, so ingrained, it spoke volumes. By morning, Arthur was in the kitchen, meticulously aligning two glasses. One held cold, black coffee. The other, water and ice. Both, he noted, seemed to weigh exactly the same. For some inexplicable reason, this trivial observation infuriated him. Memories, like a dam breaking, flooded back. San Francisco, 2009. The acrid smell of burnt plastic mingling with the aroma of cheap pizza in a bustling co-working space. He had been on the verge of panic, grappling with a frozen terminal, when a calm, steady voice had offered assistance. Your FFmpeg crashed. A girl, wearing a Google Summer of Code t-shirt, leaned in, her finger tracing the lines of the error log. Lower the bitrate, she advised. The demo miraculously worked. They secured second place. But Arthur didn't care about the accolades. He only saw her, Alara Thorne from Chicago. After the event, they bypassed the celebratory dinner, opting instead for coffee. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, a lively debate about the nuances of Python programming, the merits of various movie trilogies, and the charmingly noir sound of certain last names. By midnight, they had missed the final tram. He walked her all the way to campus, then rode back in a cab, her name a quiet whisper on his lips. A month later, he returned home, clutching his diploma and brimming with burgeoning startup dreams. His mother, Serafina, took one look at him. "You've lost weight," she declared, her tone sharp. "They clearly don't feed you properly out west." Dinner swiftly transformed into an unsolicited status report. She rattled off a litany of names. Successful cousins, prosperous family friends, each story punctuated by a pointed, judgmental glance in his direction. "Compare yourself," she urged. Startups, Arthur, are not a stable foundation. His father, Marcus, remained hidden, as always, behind the reassuring barrier of his newspaper. Arthur had harbored the hope of introducing Alara to his parents under more relaxed circumstances, free from the crushing weight of expectation. But on Christmas Day, 2009, the tone was irrevocably set at dinner. Serafina, with a deceptively sweet smile, inquired, "So, Alara, what are your grand plans after graduation?" Seeking funding, Alara responded calmly, her composure unruffled. "Any major investors on the horizon?" Serafina probed. "Not yet. Will your parents be able to assist?" Alara's voice remained steady. "My mother is a nurse. My father passed away." Serafina nodded, as if making a mental note, a silent, damning judgment. No guarantees. That's certainly brave. Alara didn't flinch. Some guarantees, Serafina, exist only on paper. Others are forged in real experience. I prefer the latter. Later, Arthur overheard his parents' hushed whispers drifting from the kitchen. His mother was insistent that he needed someone solid, someone with a tangible background. His father, ever the quiet voice of reason, muttered something about love not being a balance sheet. Serafina's phrase, "I'm just testing the waters," resonated, a chilling premonition. Caleb had entered Arthur's life during their college years and had never truly departed. His mother had always held a particular fondness for Caleb, often referring to him as the practical counterbalance to Arthur's sometimes head-in-the-clouds personality. At a family barbecue in 2010, Serafina strategically seated Caleb next to Alara. "You too," she purred, a wide, knowing smile gracing her lips, "are truly kind souls. Do tell each other about your charity work." Arthur, at the time, dismissed it as a harmless, if slightly pushy, gesture. But now, he replayed that day through a different lens, a lens of suspicion, acutely aware of how he had felt like an outsider in his own unfolding narrative. When he proposed to Alara, she had expressed a desire for a simple, intimate ceremony beneath the shade of ancient apple trees. Serafina, however, summarily overruled her. The grand Blackwood Manor was declared non-negotiable. A wedding, she had insisted with unwavering conviction, is a company's public image. One does not skimp on such a crucial display. A mere week before the wedding, Arthur overheard his mother's voice drifting from the porch. "A wedding," she intoned, her voice laced with strategic intent, "is a business plan. Pick your partner wisely." He had initially assumed she was addressing his father, but when he turned, her gaze was fixed directly on Alara, who stared back, her expression unblinking, impenetrable. Later, Alara had brushed it off with a joke. "Your mom is just stress testing me, Arthur, but I'm perfectly fine." He had believed her implicitly. When Alara shared the joyous news of her pregnancy in 2012, Arthur had been utterly overjoyed. He had swept her up, carrying her around the house, and immediately called his mother. Serafina had appeared, almost instantly, bearing armfuls of tiny onesies and a meticulously compiled list of top pediatricians. Over dinner, she had smiled warmly at Caleb, remarking, "If only I'd had a friend as supportive as him during my own pregnancy, I would have slept so much better." It had sounded sweet, even endearing back then. Now, it felt like a crucial clue he had tragically missed. Arthur's phone buzzed, a message from his mother. "Don't forget the Gilded Spoon brunch. Hope Alara joins us." He typed a terse reply, "We'll see," and a shiver traced its way down his spine. A mere week ago, his response would have been an unthinking "of course." He walked over to his desk, opened an old email archive, and typed Caleb into the search bar. Dozens of messages populated the screen, but one, dated April 2011, stood out like a beacon in the fog. "Thank you for supporting my idea, Art. Alara truly opens up around you. Arthur is simply too logical to grasp the full picture. Let's keep the rehearsal dinner informal." It wasn't just a message. It was a glaring red flag he had tragically failed to interpret in time. Buried deeper in another email from his mother, a silent bomb exploded. She had actively encouraged Caleb to be there for Alara, to offer support if she ever faltered, subtly reassuring him that Arthur, reliable as always, would dutifully play his part. It wasn't advice. It was a meticulously crafted strategy. And then came the final, devastating blow. 2 weeks before the wedding. Room 414 is reserved. Discretion matters. He trusts you. Arthur froze. The words blurred before his eyes. His hands began to tremble uncontrollably. "She set me up," he whispered, the realization a raw, tearing sound in the oppressive silence. The room felt thick, suffocating. He slammed the laptop shut, opened a blank document, and, with the precision of an engineer, titled it, Written Root Cause Analysis. Bullet points began to flow. Dates, messages, suspected motives, his mother's chilling control, Caleb's opportunistic ego, Alara's perceived ambition. He meticulously backed up the file, saving a copy to a flash drive, which he then stashed deep inside a construction brick box, treating it like the most dangerous contraband. It was 2:40 p.m. time to pick up Miles from school. The route was intimately familiar, yet Arthur no longer felt like the master of his own destiny, the driver in the vehicle of his life. He glanced at the best ad ever sign taped to a shelf in his kitchen, and his finger instinctively tapped it, testing the glue, testing what still held. His father's old line echoed in his mind. "Keep an open heart, but build your own walls." It had once seemed quaint, almost folksy. Now, it sounded like a vital piece of armor. He retrieved the DNA test kit from the drawer, slipped it into his coat pocket, and extinguished the lights. He would not confront anyone yet. Numbers first, then the unvarnished truth. And whatever remained afterward could, for all he cared, burn to ashes. He closed the door behind him, leaving a house that now felt less like a home and more like a stage set for someone else's cruel drama. The next morning arrived early, cloaked in a chilling clarity. Coffee kept his hands occupied, but his thoughts remained fragmented, shattered pieces of a life turned upside down. His marriage had fractured, a jagged rift running through its core. His oldest friendship, once a steadfast anchor, had crumbled into dust. All that remained was a cold, hard clarity. For once, he chose to work from the desk in his home office. The chair felt stiff, unforgiving. His laptop, warm against his fingertips, offered a strange comfort. His mind drifted backward. Caleb Holton, the loudest, most boisterous presence on campus. Rugby bruises, computer viruses, the effervescent life of every party. Everyone gravitated towards him, drawn by his magnetic charm. He lit up every room he entered. But behind that radiant glow lay a chaotic mess. Late assignments, traffic tickets, missed deadlines that he somehow spun into dazzling firework finales. "Reliability is a spare tire," Caleb used to quip, a line that always garnered laughs, until group projects necessitated adding escape clauses to prevent him from sinking the entire endeavor. Arthur recalled one particularly sharp betrayal. In 2010, they had pitched a startup concept at a prestigious incubator. Arthur had meticulously crafted the intricate algorithm. Caleb was responsible for the compelling pitch. At the 11th hour, Caleb, without consultation, had unilaterally added a flashy, exorbitant PR budget that completely blindsided the panel. They lost the crucial grant. Afterward, in the pouring rain on Willow Creek Lane, Arthur had confronted him. "Why did you alter the figures?" Caleb had simply waved it off with a dismissive hand gesture. "You handle the details, Art. I see the grand vision. No noise, no traction." They had shared a glass of whiskey. Arthur, against his better judgment, had let it go. Looking back now, it wasn't mere youthful recklessness. It was a deeply ingrained pattern. Another memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. San Diego, 2011. He and Alara were attending a conference. Arthur had succumbed to a sudden fever and retreated to their room early. Alara had gently tucked him in, then ventured out. She returned late, smelling faintly of the sea, air, and exotic spices. "Dinner with the gamification team," she had explained. The next morning, Caleb had texted him, "Summit Bluff Bistro was amazing. Loved your tip about the fish tacos." At the time, It had seemed like a curious coincidence. Now, it felt like irrefutable evidence. Arthur logged into the telecom provider's dashboard. 5 family members appeared on the screen. His line, Alera's, the children's tablets, and an old SIM card he had once given Caleb for a project. The card was technically inactive, but 2 weeks prior, between midnight and 1 a.m., it had sent a relentless barrage of texts to Alera every 3 to 5 minutes. He checked the location history. The sender's cell tower was located less than a mile from their house. The same night, Alera had claimed to be working on an article. The evidence was accumulating at an alarming rate. He downloaded the data, encrypted it with layers of advanced algorithms, and stored it deep inside a password-protected folder. Later that day, after dropping Luna off at school, Arthur meticulously scanned through their shared family cloud storage, specifically filtering for photos captured using Caleb's camera. He knew Caleb frequently uploaded them into their collective album. At first glance, they appeared innocuous: barbecues, school plays, children's sports games. But the metadata, the hidden data about the data, told a vastly different story. One Thanksgiving photograph, for instance, indicated it was taken in Long Island, hundreds of miles from where they had actually hosted dinner. Was it simply misfiled or intentionally misdated? Another image showed Alera at a baseball game with the children. Arthur distinctly recalled being away buying hot dogs. In the subtle reflection of the food truck window, barely discernible, was Caleb smiling, and a woman's hand gently tucking his hair behind his ear. Arthur zoomed in, his heart pounding. The nail polish was a distinctive coral pink. Alera typically favored a clear, understated shade. But a week earlier, she had returned from the salon, laughing about trying something new. That wasn't just a hand. That was her hand. Another piece of the devastating truth. That evening, the house hummed with a deceptive normalcy. Cartoons blared from the television. Miles was engrossed with his fidget spinner. Alera, in the kitchen, was slicing fruit with effortless grace. From the outside, the scene remained picture-perfect. Arthur's gaze landed on the thick, leather-bound photo album resting on the couch. It was Alera's cherished annual Christmas tradition. He sat down and slowly flipped through the pages. Caleb was an almost constant presence in nearly every shot. The dutiful godfather, the enthusiastic coach, even a convincing Santa Claus. It had once felt like an outpouring of generosity. Now it felt meticulously calculated, part of a larger, insidious design. In photo after photo, Caleb's eyes weren't focused on the children, nor on the camera lens. They were fixed with an undeniable intensity on Alera. Arthur expertly concealed his growing unease, nodding impassively when Miles asked if he could cue up the next episode of his show. His voice remained steady, betraying nothing. But later, in the quiet solitude of the kitchen, he retrieved an old hard drive, carefully tucked away behind the oven manual, a relic from his college days, containing long-buried instant messaging and chat logs. He booted up an emulator and initiated a keyword search through Caleb's archived conversations. Fragments of conversations surfaced, sharp and cutting like broken glass. She doesn't realize how much he's investing in her. He's funding our kids. Just a joke. Don't panic. It wasn't a joke. Now, one message from 2010. Our kids landed differently, which had once sounded merely figurative, now felt horrifyingly literally true. He leaned back in his chair, feeling the deep, irreparable rupture settle within his very core. His closest friend, his trusted confidant, had transmuted into a stranger. Worse, an architect of betrayal. A distant memory flickered into focus. Their graduation party in 2011. Arthur had casually mentioned to Caleb that he had proposed to Alera. Caleb had laughed, ordered 3 shots of tequila, and raised a toast to a friendship that can survive any secret. At the time, it had seemed like a playful, drunken remark. In hindsight, it was chilling foreshadowing. By dawn, Arthur was hunched over a sheet of paper, meticulously mapping out the intricate web of connections. In the very center, he scrawled Alara plus Caleb. Branches spread outward, a bewildering network, late-night texts, unsettling metadata embedded in family photos, fragment from college chats, damning emails from his mother. He tagged each line, confirmed, suspected, needs proof. The mind map resembled a digital forensics case file. Only this time, the target wasn't some anonymous hacker. It was his entire life. A message buzzed on his phone. "Hey brother, I'll swing by this weekend with some new gloves for Evan." "Sound good." Arthur stared at the word brother until it blurred, a meaningless smudge on the screen. He began to type a reply, paused, erased, typed again, erased. Finally, he hit cancel, flipped his phone to do not disturb, and stepped away from the desk. A half-drunk coffee cup sat cooling nearby. He lifted it, took a sip, and burned his lip. But the flinch wasn't from the heat. It was from a sudden, sharp memory. Miles's first birthday. Caleb had brought a comically oversized baseball bat. Everyone had laughed, except for later. Arthur had caught him whispering intently to Alara by the cake. She had smiled, her eyes cast down, almost demurely. At the time, it had seemed utterly harmless. Now, every single moment, every gesture, every interaction was tainted with suspicion. The past was unraveling, thread by agonizing thread. Arthur maintained his facade, performing the daily rituals, school runs, work calls, forced smiles for family photos. But internally, his clock operated on a vastly different schedule now. Gather, confirm, secure. He would not confront. Not yet. Not without every single piece of evidence firmly in hand. By Monday afternoon, he found himself walking into a stark, gray-walled office on the 20th floor in Sterling Ridge. A discreet sign on the door read, "Summit Investigations and Forensics." A woman with a severely pulled-back bun and an unmistakable detective's intensity met him at the threshold. "I'm Meredith Stone," she stated, her voice crisp. Arthur placed a folder, starkly labeled "Trust Equals False," on her polished desk. "I require facts," he said, his voice low and firm. Quietly. "No leaks. Absolute discretion." "Who, precisely, is under the microscope?" she asked, her gaze unwavering. "My wife and my best friend," Arthur replied, the words feeling foreign and bitter on his tongue. She didn't blink, her expression unchanging. A classic triangle. "What's your scope?" "Full-month engagement, commencing today. DNA analysis, phone logs, covert surveillance, comprehensive financial forensics. Budget is not an issue. Discretion is non-negotiable." She slid a form across the desk. "Sign here, Mr. Carroll. This could irrevocably alter the course of your entire life." He signed, his hand trembling only once, a fleeting, almost imperceptible tremor. That evening, he stopped by the office of Andrew Lowe, an old friend who had transitioned into a career in law. The space felt more like a refined study than a traditional law firm. Dark, polished wood, framed legal degrees, and, incongruously, a miniature basketball hoop in the corner. "Is this simply paranoia, Arthur?" Andrew asked, his tone cautious. "Or do you possess actual, tangible dirt?" Arthur dropped a weighty stack of printed messages, photographs, and spreadsheets onto the desk. "I need to safeguard the children and the finances," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "Establish a protective trust. Initiate a comprehensive audit of all accounts. If this situation detonates, I want robust firewalls already firmly in place." "Who is your preferred auditor?" Andrew queried. Genevieve Chun. She's a bloodhound encased in a calculator's body. Quiet rollout, Andrew confirmed. Stealth mode. Nobody jumps the gun. Andrew raised a skeptical eyebrow. So, we're effectively at war. No, Arthur corrected him, his gaze distant. We're pretending not to be. That night, under the solitary glow of his desk lamp, Arthur unboxed 2 more DNA kits, delivered discreetly by a courier robot. Each kit contained a sterile swab and a unique QR code. He meticulously labeled the boxes. Miles, Luna, Evan. The duffels, he muttered to himself, the words barely audible, are coming with me in the morning. The plan, he believed, was airtight. He would tell Luna it was a fun biology project for school. He would tell the boys it was part of a top-secret startup experiment. The children, bless their innocent hearts, wouldn't ask too many questions. The lab, bound by strict protocols, wouldn't disclose anything. But soon, the raw numbers would speak. And when they did, the suffocating silence would finally, definitively end. The alert on Arthur's phone buzzed. 2 files from Meredith. One was a geolocation log, revealing a disturbing pattern. Caleb's truck visiting the same remote ranch 4 separate times in 2 weeks. A mere 30 minutes after each visit, Alara's white Audi would pull up to the same secluded gate. The second file contained photographs, clear enough to unmistakably identify them both. Arthur encrypted the damning images, tucking them into a deeply locked folder, secured by a complex 16-character password, just in case. The next morning felt unsettlingly normal. Alara was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Miles was meticulously sketching robots, his tongue sticking out in concentration. Luna chattered excitedly about the upcoming school fair. Arthur, with practiced ease, quietly slipped the DNA test kits into their backpacks. "What are these?" Evan asked, his brow furrowed with curiosity. "Science class preview," Arthur replied, flashing a casual, practiced grin. Alara raised an eyebrow, a fleeting moment of suspicion in her eyes, but ultimately let it pass. Just another fun experiment from her overly curious, tech-obsessed husband. Arthur met her gaze, a forced smile plastered on his face, expertly concealing the terrible truth. Later, in a glass-walled conference room at his company, Arthur feigned a yawn, signing off on a delayed product release, while covertly texting his forensic accountant under the table. Fidelity dividends rerouted to Alara's shadow account. $23,000 annually, Genevieve wrote, adding, tracing all unlogged transfers. Another message followed. Samples received, labeled A, B, C. Alara's Audi confirmed back at the ranch. 2 figures spotted. And then, the final, chilling piece of intel, Caleb's cloud account, paid for with your mother's credit card. Arthur slammed his laptop shut, the sudden noise echoing in the quiet room. A coworker glanced over, startled. Arthur offered a weak, feigned yawn. Crunch time. No sleep lately. That night, the house smelled of warm pizza. The children were engrossed in their various social media feeds, giggling at viral videos. Alara handed Arthur an unmarked envelope. "Yours?" she asked, her voice light. "Probably another bank statement," he shrugged, slipping into his pocket, his heart a drum against his ribs. Later, in the privacy of his study, he opened it. Inside was a flash drive from his lawyer, containing a proposed asset split. 60% designated for the children, 20% held in secure reserves, and 20% kept as liquid assets. A terse, handwritten note accompanied it. "Click when you're ready to stop hiding." He locked the drive in his personal safe and added the small, cold key to the chain with his wedding ring. The metal clicked with an unnerving finality. More intelligence arrived, a relentless stream. Drone footage revealed a playground at the ranch, eerily identical to their own. The same swing set, the same slide, even the same logo on the equipment. Why recreate it? Arthur had asked Meredith, his voice strained. People need decoys, she had replied, her voice pragmatic. If Serafina financed it too, that's her checkmate. The ranch wasn't just a hidden rendezvous point. It was a meticulously crafted, counterfeit version of his own life. Wednesday morning, after the school drop-off, Arthur met with a trusted wealth advisor. A protective trust, the man explained, his voice calm and reassuring. Shielded in the event of divorce, controlled until the children reach legal age. No court orders, just simple signatures. Arthur signed, his hand steady. He remembered Alara once saying, "This is where we'll grow old together." Now, all he desired was distance. Then came a message from Caleb, flying to Chicago. "Bats are with me. Give it to Evan." Arthur deleted it, unread. That night, fresh footage arrived. 37 hours of surveillance. In one particular clip, Caleb was observed checking the grill and the replica playground. Minutes later, Alara's car pulled in, laden with cider and grocery bags. Caleb's hand, casually, intimately, touched her waist. Arthur didn't flinch. The initial raw pain had long since calcified into a hardened resolve. He saved the file under ranch_evidence.zip, then opened a spreadsheet. One red cell glowed ominously. WhatsApp data still pending. Be patient, Meredith had advised. They'll slip when they truly believe you're blind. Arthur didn't sleep. He wrote lines of code until 4 a.m. Complex logic sequences that cleared his head, imposed order on the chaos. Then, on a blank page, he listed 6 unwavering goals. 1. Confirm DNA. 2. Retrieve Blackwood Manor records. 3. Crack WhatsApp. 4. Finalize trust. 5. Track Serafina's payments to Caleb. 6. Hire a child psychologist. That last one hit hardest. The children still laughed, still innocent. But truth, he knew, shatters innocence, and he would need expert help to soften the inevitable blow. At 5 a.m., the lab report arrived. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. None matched Arthur's DNA. None of them were biologically his. He didn't fall apart. That moment, the initial shock had long passed. Now he simply took inventory. He texted Meredith, "Proceed." Then Andrew, "Open the drive." The war had begun. Not in a courtroom, not in public, but in silence. Strategy, not raw emotion. Clarity, not panic. Arthur now maintained 3 distinct calendars: family, birthdays, games, doctor visits; work, product launches, investor calls; and freedom ops, the covert one, detailing LLC formations, fund transfers, and firewall maneuvers. On the surface, he presented the image of any high-level executive. Beneath that polished exterior, he was orchestrating a meticulously controlled exit strategy. His attorney arranged a meeting with a top-tier law firm in Manhattan. From a skyscraper overlooking the majestic Hudson River, Arthur reviewed the strategy. Assets offshored, shares moved to an Irish custodian, NFTs securely held in Eldoria. Legal, clean, completely audit-proof. This wasn't overkill. It was an essential defense. Alara had Serafina's formidable backing and an incoming team of expensive, ruthless attorneys. If he failed to lock everything down now, the cost would be everything he held dear. Through a carefully chosen proxy, he purchased an Ocean's Edge townhouse under a Sierra Corporation shell, technically ownerless, practically his. He named it Studio in his phone. It would be his fallback, quiet, hidden, and utterly untouchable. By Friday, he had finalized the Carroll Legacy Trust. It now held 60% of his startup, the majority of his bonds, his entire crypto wallet, and every single cent from his intellectual property royalties, all irrevocably locked in for the children. When Miles had recently asked, "Does my name sound like a superhero?" Arthur had smiled and replied, "Names make stories special." Now, the trust was their invisible shield. But protecting wealth wasn't enough. He had to make it liquid, make it accessible for them. In a private Zoom call, he walked his CFO through a compelling pitch deck that framed a strategic buyout as a shrewd business move. While it superficially appeared to be preparation for a Series B funding round, Arthur was actually loading every critical document into a virtual data room. If this company needed to become liquid, the process would be swift and surgical. Meanwhile, Genevieve Chun, the forensic accountant, painstakingly combed through the family accounts. 6 recurring charges appeared on Alara's card. $900 each to Briarcliff Wellness Center. Ostensibly couples therapy. The address, however, was the same ranch Meredith Stone had already tracked. And the account was paid via Serafina Carroll. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying precision. Alara and Caleb weren't just hiding. They were being actively funded. Arthur took out a $20 million key person insurance policy, designating the children's trust as the sole beneficiary. If everything truly blew up, no one, absolutely no one, could touch it. He wasn't just preparing for betrayal. He was rendering it irrelevant. Midweek, Meredith delivered months of messages exchanged between Alara and Caleb. One particular recording chilled him to the bone. While Arthur was reading the children a bedtime story, the illicit pair had been whispering. Serafina thought of everything. Arthur lives in numbers. He hit pause, the words echoing in the silence of his study. They were right, he realized, but they didn't comprehend the full scope of it. They didn't realize he had been using numbers as his most powerful leverage, long before they had even begun their elaborate charade. At night, the new townhouse still carried the faint, lingering scent of fresh paint and plaster. On the kitchen island, he placed a sober gray notebook and the code to his safe box. He wrote a short, concise list. Finish due diligence. Secure LOIs from banks. Finalize guardianship terms. Move kids' insurance to trust. Bring in a child psychologist, discreetly disguised as a school project. The notebook closed with a soft thud. A magnet clicked into place. The next day, Meredith texted a heads up. Serafina was hosting a luncheon for Caleb's charity, a soft launch into the public eye. Arthur responded by instructing Andrew to file for a sealed divorce, citing irreparable breakdown and potential fraud. By Monday, the papers were quietly lodged in the courthouse, a digital copy securely locked away in the North Cedar vault. That same evening, his CFO confirmed 2 offers for a controlling share of his company, $120 million and $128 million. Arthur responded politely, his mind already dissecting and dividing the numbers. Even half the money, he knew, would be enough to secure each child's education, their future, their absolute freedom. Just knowing it was real brought a fresh surge of oxygen into his lungs. That night, standing by the window of his apartment, the city lights twinkling beneath him like a sprawling constellation, Arthur contemplated what lay ahead. He would soon provide Meredith with his cloud pass phrase. The psychologist's report would follow. Then, the first closed hearing. Yet, everything at home would continue to appear untouched, pristine. Pancakes for breakfast, school drop-offs, shared laughter over the morning meal. But beneath that meticulously maintained surface, a hidden fortress now stood. Trusts, shell companies, encrypted logs. The only word etched inside its fortified walls: freedom. By Thanksgiving, the air carried the crisp scent of wet leaves and the comforting aroma of chimney smoke. Arthur meticulously placed the roasted turkey on the dining table, ensuring the cutlery was perfectly aligned, 3 forks to the left, knife and spoon to the right. 3 candles burned low, their flames dancing softly. Between them, white envelopes sealed with dark blue wax, one for every adult present. The front door burst open, and Miles raced in, excitedly waving a perfectly shaped acorn. Luna followed, clutching her cherished dinosaur book. Evan held a signed baseball, his eyes bright. Alara entered next, accompanied by Serafina and Marcus. Marcus, ever stoic, wore an expressionless mask. Serafina, conversely, was all smiles and forced cheer. "The turkey's perfect, Arthur," Alara said, breathing in the rich aroma. She noticed the envelopes, but tellingly didn't ask. "We'll open them after the toast," Arthur stated, his voice calm and even, betraying no hint of the storm about to break. Caleb arrived 10 minutes late, the low hum of his truck rolling into the driveway. He strode in, carrying a box of wine and another bouquet of rosemary. "Happy Thanksgiving, family," he announced, aiming for his usual charming demeanor as he took a step towards Alara. Arthur intercepted the wine box. "Thanks," he said coolly, his voice flat. "Wine goes on the sideboard." Caleb hesitated, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, then forced a smile and slid into his seat between Luna and Marcus. His sealed envelope lay directly in front of him. He glanced at it once, then quickly averted his gaze. Dinner was quiet, almost unnaturally so, as everyone settled into their places. The children, as always, expected a witty joke from their father, a cherished Thanksgiving tradition. But Arthur stood too still, his gaze sweeping across the faces gathered at the table. "Every Thanksgiving," he began, his voice resonating with a quiet authority, "we speak about what brings us together. But this year I want to express gratitude for the truth, even when it arrives late." Serafina stiffened visibly in her chair. "Arthur, the children," she began, her voice laced with panic. "They'll hear it," he interjected, reaching for the stack of envelopes. "Luna, Miles, Evan, this is a family dinner. I need a moment with the adults first, and then we'll eat. Sound fair?" The children, sensing the unusual tension but remarkably calm, nodded, their eyes wide with curiosity. He passed the envelopes around. Alara, Caleb, Serafina, and finally one for Marcus, who hesitated, a rare uncertainty in his posture before taking it. Alara's brow furrowed. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Answers," Arthur stated, his gaze unwavering. "Please open them." Wax cracked, paper rustled. Serafina's face went ashen as she saw copies of her incriminating emails to Caleb, followed by hotel bookings, therapy invoices, cloud storage receipts. Every line was a stark, irrefutable fact. Not a single word was wasted. Caleb found the DNA results. Charts, numbers, clinical stamps, all zeros in the paternity column. He looked as though he might speak, but instead, his gaze dropped to the table, defeated. Alara's envelope was thick, heavy with the weight of her unraveling life. Inside, she found a court notice of divorce, detailed trust paperwork for the children, and an asset sale agreement transferring the company to the new Carroll Legacy Trust. On top of the final page, a single, handwritten line, "I offered peace. Everything you need is here. All I ask for is honesty." Her breath hitched, a strangled sound escaping her throat. She pressed a trembling hand to her neck, as if the air had suddenly thinned to nothing. "Arthur," she whispered, her voice choked with desperation. "Can we please talk later?" "There is no later," he said calmly, his voice a steady rock in the turbulent, emotional storm. "There's just now. The truth is that the three of you," he glanced briefly at Serafina and Caleb, "have been scripting my entire life behind my back." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze piercing. I'm not raising my voice because you were counting on a volatile argument. I brought paperwork because you were counting on my silence." Serafina attempted to regain control, her voice weak, pleading. "I was protecting the family, Arthur." "No," he countered, his voice sharp with unvarnished truth. "You were chasing a fantasy, Mother. You sold my very foundation to someone else, and, in doing so, taught me to love lies." Marcus finally spoke, his voice low, heavy with disappointment. "Serafina, you knew?" "I believed it was better for everyone," she replied weakly, her gaze avoiding his. "For who?" Marcus stared at his own envelope, as if it contained more than just pages, but the very essence of betrayal. Caleb inhaled sharply. "Arthur, I didn't save it for the lawyers." Arthur cut in, his voice cold and definitive. "You'll most certainly need one." He turned his gaze to the children, his expression softening. "You did nothing wrong. You are the sole reason any of this truly matters." Miles, ever practical, raised his hand. "Dad, the turkey's getting cold." Arthur smiled gently, a fleeting moment of warmth. "You're right, buddy. The turkey shouldn't suffer for adult mistakes." He began to carve the bird with surgical calm, the knife gliding cleanly through the meat. Around the table, no one spoke, but no one left. The crushing weight of hidden things had landed squarely and undeniably in the open. Alara wiped away tears that streamed down her cheeks. Serafina stared blankly at the table. Caleb subtly shifted his chair away from the table, as if trying to physically distance himself. Marcus drank his water in one long, gulping swallow. Arthur picked up his own envelope. Inside was only a single photograph. Him with the children at Cascade Point, frozen in a moment of uncomplicated happiness. He turned it face down on the table. "Let's eat," he said quietly. Dinner restarted, heavier than before, but the children, remarkably, still ate with appetite. Gratitude, it seemed, had roots that ran deeper than betrayal. At 9:57 a.m., the deal closed. 3 swift digital signatures and $128 million instantly moved into meticulously structured trusts, legal reserves, and anonymous accounts in Geneva and Dubai. In a quiet, sterile bank office, Arthur leaned back in his chair. Andrew offered a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. It was done. The divorce had been finalized just the day before. Alara kept the house and half the visible assets in exchange for her silence. Serafina signed off on an agreement to avoid a full-scale investigation into her foundation's financial irregularities. Caleb, true to his nature, disappeared, resurfacing somewhere in Denver, where no one called him Godfather anymore. A sleek black Tesla waited outside the building. The driver was not his usual chauffeur. Arthur climbed in the back, uttering a single word: "Airport." From the private jet, the sprawling cityscape of New York faded into a distant, hazy blur. He messaged the children, calm, brief notes. Luna received a subscription to a private online reading club. Miles received a mailing address for a specialized comic book subscription. Evan received a crypto key, locked to open on his 18th birthday. His first stop was Lisbon. Tiled roofs, narrow, winding streets, the invigorating scent of the sea breeze. He walked like a local, lived anonymously, a ghost in the vibrant city. The Wi-Fi was always locked down. His VPN routed meticulously through Dubai. Mornings began with strong coffee and sweet pastel de nata. The Atlantic murmured nearby, a constant, comforting presence. His new name was Mark Lancaster, but to 3 children oceans away, he was still unequivocally Dad. At night, he coded as Blue Delta, quietly contributing to open-source encryption software. No one knew the anonymous developer had once run a 100-person tech firm. He hadn't vanished. He had simply meticulously erased his trail. Once a month, a burner phone, routed through Tor, would ping, just enough for his lawyer to confirm his existence and relay crucial medical and tuition updates. No social media, no email, no digital traffic whatsoever. 3 months later, he moved to Vietnam. A tranquil, beachside co-working space in Coral Haven became his new home. He dedicated his days to building a prototype firewall, sipped cool sugarcane juice, and answered to the name George Ray. His therapy was a routine of dawn swims, 40-task workdays, and bitcoins meticulously stashed in discreetly concealed razors and safes. In January, Andrew emailed an update. Evan hit a home run. Luna won a science fair. Miles filmed a short movie. Arthur played the video clip on a loop. The voice yelling "cut" one more time sounded uncannily like his own. The ache didn't break him. It hardened into a resolute silence. By spring, he had settled in Sakura Gardens, a small, elegant wooden house nestled within a tranquil moss garden. He cooked, diligently studied traditional knife skills, and went by the name T-shirt Morris. No more family calendar, just the corporate one and Quiet Horizon, a renamed shell of his freedom ops. Reminders still popped up on his secure devices. Pay Luna's tuition. Renew Evan's insurance. Extend travel visas. He remained a quiet, unseen presence in their lives, even without a name. Sometimes, he imagined catching the echo of their distant laughter. He never did. The past lived behind layers of digital firewalls and across vast oceans. Freedom, he realized, wasn't necessarily peace. It was an absence of noise, an absence of mirrors reflecting a fabricated reality. On the 1-year anniversary of the pivotal deal, Arthur climbed a verdant hill overlooking Sakura Gardens. The ancient city spread out beneath him like a meticulously folded origami masterpiece. On a small wooden tablet, he inscribed a single, profound sentence. "May those I love live more honestly than I did." He hung it with a steady, unwavering hand. The specters of old dinners, the damning envelopes, the suffocating silences drifted further away. The comforting scent of burning pine replaced the bitter tang of regret. There would be no rewinding, only clarity. He descended slowly. Somewhere in his encrypted archive, the next destination, the next chapter, awaited him. The past was irrevocably closed, filed away in a folder labeled 2008. Months later, a quiet headline ran in the Crestwood Chronicle. Apex Capital launches $400 million Northeast Tech Fund. The managing partner was listed as C. Lancaster. No photo accompanied the article. His brief bio read, Stanford grad, few patents, early retirement. Rumors, whispered in hushed tones, circulated about the elusive Mr. Lancaster. He reportedly drove a gray Defender with no visible license plates, tipped generously in cash, steadfastly declined all interviews, and was often seen reading Japanese novels on an old e-reader, eschewing modern technology. From her fading estate, Serafina watched the news, her face contorted in a bitter grimace. Once a queen of galas and charity events, she was now shunned, her reputation irrevocably tainted after the scandal involving the misuse of donation funds. No one returned her increasingly desperate calls. Her son did not visit. Alara had reverted to her maiden name, Thorne. Her promising startup had withered and died in the aftermath of the public scandal. She now taught night classes and subsisted on alimony. When she famously turned down a mysterious investor offering her total control, she had publicly declared, "Capital without a face is poison." No other offers came after that. The children, now navigating the tumultuous years of adolescence, split their time between their two homes. Arthur had them for the summers. The trust, meticulously guided by code rather than by shifting moods, paid out quarterly. Marcus, the one who had, in his own way, vouched for everyone, was quietly, almost mercifully, pushed out of his social circles. No formal charges were filed, but his once stellar reputation simply evaporated. He sold his beloved boat, moved into an apartment above a dock shop, and traded fine wines for the fumes of varnish. By midsummer, the tech park received its official name, Apex Innovations. Its logo, strikingly, mirrored an old family photograph taken at the Cascade Point Falls. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Mr. Lancaster was conspicuously absent. A sharp-suited executive from Kenyon Holdings presented the $40 million check, delivered a brief speech praising second chances, and then stepped back. In the milling crowd, a tall man in a charcoal suit and a discreet baseball cap stood silently, unnoticed. Just long enough to listen. Then he was gone, a phantom in the crowd. Alara saw him by pure accident. She was leading a group of her students through the impressive new tech campus when a familiar figure caught her eye. Shoulders slightly hunched, fingers expertly slipping a small notebook from his jacket to quickly scribble something down. Her breath caught in her throat, a sudden, desperate realization. But before she could be absolutely certain, he disappeared behind the shimmering elevator doors. That night, she sent a message, a single, tentative plea. The new lab is incredible. I want to show the kids what real giving looks like. The response came, impersonal and swift, from a lawyer's office. Message received. Serafina, undeterred, attempted her own route. She leveraged old contacts on the university board. She formally requested a meeting with Mr. Lancaster. A week later, a curt, formal reply came back. The financial committee sees no strategic alignment with her organization. Frustrated, she called a broker, demanding the name behind the foundation. The next morning, the answer came back, chillingly precise. Quiet zone regulations prohibit disclosure. In the fall, Apex Innovations featured portraits of its first grant recipients. Among them, Luna Carroll, now a junior specializing in bioinformatics. Her research focused on stress markers in adolescence. The Crestwood Chronicle interviewed her, a prominent feature in their lifestyle section. This grant, she stated, her smile radiating a quiet confidence, proves that the past doesn't dictate the future. Her words carried the weight of someone who had learned restraint and resilience at a remarkably young age. The Tech Park hosted a grand winter benefit to announce a new internship program. Chandeliers glittered above pristine white tablecloths. A symphony orchestra played soft, ambient music, and donors mingled with local officials, their voices a polite murmur. Alara arrived in a reserved navy blue dress, her demeanor composed, steady. Her name tag read Emily Thornyuk. As she looked up, her eyes locked onto a man in a gray half-mask, part of the tech ball's unique dress code. Yes, but the jawline was utterly unmistakable. The room lights dimmed, signaling the evening's main event. Then, the founder himself appeared on stage. No musk, tuxedo immaculate. A small silver mitt pin gleamed subtly on his lapel. His hair was darker, but threaded with streaks of gray. His voice, lower, more tired than the one that once said, "Let's not make a fuss." 7 years ago, he began, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed room. I learned that both code and family demand absolute transparency. Today, we are giving that back to this city, a place where second chances can truly be built, brick by brick. A profound silence hung in the air, followed by a surging wave of applause. Serafina, in her seat, paled visibly. Marcus wasn't there. He was already in detox. But later, in a clinic break room, he would watch the live stream on repeat, a cup of bitter water clutched in his trembling hand. Alara moved towards the exit, intercepting Arthur before the surging crowd could engulf him. Her mask concealed most of her face, but not her eyes, which held a complex mix of emotions. "You came back," she whispered, the words barely audible. "The city needed me," he replied, his voice calm, measured. "But what about us?" she pressed. "You want a presence," he said, his gaze steady. "I needed freedom." She nodded slowly. She already knew. "I applied to your foundation," she admitted. "No one made the connection." "The best candidates," he replied, his voice gentler now, "go through the process. Submit your portfolio. The team will decide." She offered a polite, somewhat stiff smile, her fingers tightening, almost crushing a forgotten glass of wine. Serafina attempted to rise, but remained seated as Arthur's eyes met hers, calm, unreadable. She looked down, utterly defeated. Later, Arthur disappeared again. The gray defender pulled silently into the night, reflections from the gala flickering across its windows like fleeting memories. Only the most alert observer would have noticed that he was communicating with his driver using a series of subtle hand signals. No words. No noise. The next morning, newspapers were filled with headlines about the tech billionaire revitalizing Crestwood. One keen journalist noted that Lancaster was an anagram for Carol Inn. He drafted a compelling story. His editor, however, killed it. "Leave it," he instructed. "The region needs his money more than it needs his ghosts." The meeting was held in a stark, minimalist Willowbrook loft in Brooklyn, Horizon's Edge, a co-working space characterized by concrete floors, bare walls, and a single wooden table. No PR, no staging, just 4 chairs and a framed abstract painting of water. Luna entered first, her hair shorter, her eyes sharper, a laptop and a binder labeled Epigenetics tucked under her arm. Evan followed, his varsity jacket slung casually over one shoulder. Miles, now taller than his father, wore a loose shirt and sported a pixel robot tattoo on his forearm. "No hacks." A quick nod from Luna, a halfway from Evan. Miles kept his hands firmly in his pockets. Arthur gestured for them to sit, but remained standing himself. "Thanks for coming," he began, his voice dry, devoid of unnecessary emotion. "I know it wasn't an easy choice." Luna immediately opened her laptop. "We're here because we agreed to stop pretending. No more press statements, just real answers." Evan smirked. "And because someone sent business class tickets." Miles nudged him, but Arthur didn't flinch. "I didn't call to apologize," he said, his gaze fixed on them. "That's part of the conversation, but it's not the primary point. I'm here to explain what's next." Miles looked out the window, a dismissive shrug in his posture. "Little late for that, wouldn't you say?" Luna tapped her screen. "Let's skip the guilt spiral. We're adults. We were loved by 2 men," she continued, her voice clear and resonant. "One was our biological father. The other was you. They both, in their own ways, disappeared. We survived, but now we demand clarity." She pulled out a printed page. Evan sighed. "Are we holding a press conference now, Luna?" "No," she said coolly, her gaze unwavering. "We're doing structure." Arthur raised his hands, a gesture of concession and agreement. "Structure's fine." Luna didn't wait. "First question, why vanish instead of staying and facing it with us, even if it hurt? We honestly thought you'd be stronger than that." Arthur leaned in, his fingers locked together, a gesture of controlled intensity. "Back then, all I possessed was enough courage to protect what I could. Everything legal and financial was overwhelmingly against me. I spent 13 years believing I was meticulously building your future. When the truth exploded, I chose to disappear, to secure your path, to prevent further damage, and to allow you to grow without being consumed by conflict. Evan's voice tensed, edged with old resentment. You chose for us, just like always. All we had was a suffocating silence and a crying mother. Miles cut in, his voice louder, sharper. I found out from classmates. Tabloids never sleep. Thanks, Dad. The word Dad hit Arthur like a fresh crack across a healing wound. He kept his tone steady, unwavering. I hear your anger. I couldn't protect and explain simultaneously. But now we have time and clarity. He pulled 3 envelopes from his case, setting one before each of them. They weren't checks. These are trust summaries, he explained. They report on your plans and provide support. No conditions, no signatures required. This is your resource, not a tool for my control. Luna glanced at hers, her eyebrows lifting slightly in surprise. Evan ripped his open, a low whistle escaping his lips. Miles left his untouched. Trying to buy forgiveness? Miles asked, his voice laced with cynicism. No, Arthur replied, his gaze meeting his son's. It's repayment for the years I stayed away. Luna shut her laptop. Next, why return as Lancaster instead of as yourself? The city required funding, not drama, Arthur answered. Lancaster is a tool. You 3 are my name. Evan slipped the papers back into his envelope, his expression thoughtful. At my first baseball game, I distinctly saw a man in the stands, wearing a dark cap. I didn't know it was you. You could have said something then. I didn't want to drag you back into old headlines, Arthur replied, his voice softening. Now that they've moved on, that's why I'm here. No capítulo. Miles finally opened his, slowly flipping through the pages. So, I get 3 years to study art anywhere. No pressure. Sounds like permission to fail. Precisely. Arthur said, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. No instructions. But if you ever need backup, there's a 24/7 line. A profound silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant rumble of trucks and the faint hum of subway wires overhead. Luna broke it. We talked to Mom, she said, her voice softer now. She admitted she acted out of love, but that she caused immense harm. She lost a lot, Miles added, but we can't fix her choices for her. Arthur nodded. I'm not asking you to take sides. I want a life without secrets, without blame, without hiding. Evan looked at his siblings, a new idea sparking in his eyes. I've got an idea. Let's start something together. Clean slate. Apex Innovations needs a youth sports program. I can lead the coaching aspect. Arthur raised an eyebrow, a hint of his old, analytical self returning. A cyber fitness incubator? Exactly, Evan affirmed. But it'll go through the council, not just through you. Miles laughed, a clear, unrestrained sound. A family pitch beats any startup deck. Luna reopened her laptop. My research team needs athletes to study stress responses. It's a perfect overlap. Her brothers clapped, genuinely pleased. Luna rolled her eyes playfully, a faint smile playing on her lips. Anyway, Arthur watched them, unfolding again after years of stifling silence. If we're starting fresh, how about burgers? He suggested, a wistful note in his voice. I remember some pretty fierce fights over who could eat the most fries. Evan stood and stretched. New challenge. No smart rings, though. Don't want my vitals showing up in Luna's charts. Coward, she retorted, a playful glint in her eyes. I'm bringing my laptop anyway, just in case brilliant strikes. I just want food, Miles added, his voice simple, straightforward. No trauma attached. They headed towards the door. Arthur followed, his gaze fixed on their movements. Luna, dibating animatively. Evan grinning widely. Miles, joking about various sauces. It didn't feel like closure, not exactly. It felt more like the very first page of a new chapter. Unedited, unfiltered. At the door, Luna turned. "Dad," she said, her voice devoid of its earlier coldness or formality, imbued with a quiet warmth. "Thanks for showing up. Paper matters, but eyes matter more." Arthur nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "Thanks for letting me try." The street buzzed around them, a symphony of urban life. The elevator doors thumped shut like a period, but the sentence he knew continued. Later, Arthur invited them to his new place near Ocean's Edge. It was a simple setup, a desk, a comfortable couch, a functional kitchen island. On the table, 3 identical folders. "No lawyers today," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You each get 2 choices. Stay in my life, or walk away. No pressure. This is your decision." Luna sat first, her gaze unwavering, not touching the folder. "I'm staying," she declared. "Let's make visits routine. Put birthdays on the same calendar." She offered her hand. Arthur took it, his grip firm. Evan paced, then opened his folder. He scanned the contents: training plans, camp schedules, a therapist's contact information. "I'll lead the project," he said, referring to the youth sport program. "But I need some time before the family stuff. I'll decide in a few months." "Your call," Arthur replied, his voice even. "No reminders." Miles stood by the window, staring intently at his phone screen. "I'm not angry," he finally said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I'm just blank. Give me space." "Okay," Arthur replied gently. "Call whenever. No explanations needed." Miles nodded, a subtle gesture, and then left. The door closed behind him without a sound. 2 weeks later, Luna proposed monthly dinners. They chose a Sunday. 3 months later, Evan emailed, "Junior team's looking solid. Let's talk camp." They met at the stadium. Evan was steady, composed. At the end of their conversation, he said, "I'm not here for money or projects, Dad. I want to know you. Then we can start with practice." Arthur, foregoing grand speeches, simply offered a handshake and began discussing drills. Miles remained quiet for almost an entire year. Then, one night, Arthur received an email. "Need help with a game I'm building. Can we talk?" On the call, Miles was all business, code, graphics, gameplay. Before hanging up, he said, "Thanks, Dad." The word was calm, devoid of any discernible edge. "Always here," Arthur replied, a quiet triumph in his heart. A month later, Miles came to dinner. He sat next to his father, a comfortable silence settling between them. During dessert, he said, simply, "Consider me back." No drama. Arthur just nodded, a silent acknowledgement. They met often now, over dinners, during workouts, discussing research updates, and collaborating on game development. Each had made their choice in their own time. Luna almost immediately. Evan after a period of thoughtful space. And Miles only when he was truly ready. For them, biology mattered less than the consistent presence of someone who showed up and stayed. Arthur harbored no expectations now, only presence. And that, he realized, was more than enough. The children had decided for themselves who counted as dad. They marked the 3rd Saturday in June as Family Day. No holiday attachments, just a neutral date they all agreed upon. Luna liked that it fell between semesters. Evan appreciated that it didn't overlap with sports schedules. Miles simply wanted warm weather and good street food. Arthur agreed to all of it, without hesitation. They held it on the rooftop terrace at Apex Innovations, a sleek, minimalist concrete space with soaring glass panels, foldable tables, and portable grills. Drinks chilled in coolers on one side. Miles set up laptops and VR gear on the other. No outsiders were invited, just the Carol Thorne crew and a few close, trusted friends. Luna arrived early, bearing a vibrant salad and a flash drive containing a presentation. Evan rolled in with sports gear and a meticulously prepared training plan, though he wasn't there to coach. Miles brought a powerful speaker and his latest VR headset. Arthur made steaks and a homemade cake. No candes, no speeches. This gathering was not about ceremony. Once everyone had arrived, Arthur quietly opened the gathering. 2 rules, he stated. First, bring something that reflects your year. Second, when we wrap up, we only add what we truly want in next year's calendar. Luna went first. Her lab had secured crucial approval to begin clinical trials. She kept her presentation brief, but her pride was palpable. Thanks to the foundation for the technology, and thanks to my dad for staying patient when the numbers weren't making sense. Evan showed off a baseball bat, intricately signed in gold. His junior team had won regionals. He handed it to Miles, a silent nod to his brother's digital victories. Miles responded with a warm shoulder tap and then launched into a demo of his latest game. A clunky, endearing robot hauled materials through a virtual tech park. The graphics were still rough, but Luna and Evan laughed as they recognized the familiar layout of the campus. Next version gets a lab and a sports field, Miles declared confidently. Then Arthur handed out cards to each of them. Luna, plan a fall conference talk. Evan, lock down dates for youth camp. Miles, get the VR tour ready for open day. He paused, his gaze sweeping over them. And if someone changes plans, we simply erase it. You each keep your own card. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, they settled into a comfortable rhythm. Evan took over the grill, expertly flipping steaks. Luna set the table, arranging plates with a quiet precision. Miles adjusted the sound, ensuring the perfect ambience. Below, the city lights flickered on, one by one, like scattered fireflies. They chatted easily about research breakthroughs, summer plans, upcoming sports seasons. There were still occasional sharp moments, like when Evan muttered something about Mom being brilliant when she's not making excuses. But no one argued. Everyone had, in their own time, talked to Alara. She had sent a group message to them all, I love you. They had replied politely. That was enough. The past had its place, but it no longer interfered with the fragile, beautiful present. Later, Miles hooked a drone feed to the projector. Crestwood sprawled across the wall, a living, breathing map. New lights, new neighborhoods, a steadily growing campus. The city's growing faster than projected, Luna noted, her analytical mind already at work. Because it got a good coach, Evan said, spinning his glass, just as Arthur had taught him. Arthur stood near the edge of the terrace, watching them, his heart full. Through the glass panels, the night wind barely stirred, but the deep hum of the city rolled upward in gentle waves. His children were debating VR models, fine-tuning game mechanics, teasing each other about checkpoints and virtual power-ups. No cameras, no audience, just them. Miles walked over and handed him a controller. Test this for me, Dad. Want to make sure the gesture tracking's solid. Arthur took it. Luna lifted a tablet. After that, I'll need your sign-off on the biobank report. Evan raised his phone. And don't forget, practice starts at 7 tomorrow. I swore you wouldn't be late. Arthur looked at each of them. No grand declarations were needed. This was it. Belonging, proven by the quiet, unwavering proof of his presence. He stepped back and took in the drone's panoramic view. The city was still rising. Nice view, Evans said. Even better company, Arthur answered. He moved the controller. On the screen, a virtual robot laid down the first beam of a new level. Beyond the terrace glass, real cranes lifted panels into the night sky, working under the silent gaze of the stars. Arthur felt solid. Not alone. Never again. because they had chosen this. They had chosen him. The evening wound down with simple, ordinary things. VR tweaks, report signatures, training schedules. But beneath it all, something lasting had been forged. Evidence that freedom and connection, far from canceling each other out, could, in the end, coexist in a profound and meaningful way.